Tonight, we know who you are. Our federal police accuse Russia of the Medibank hack. Breaking now, a health emergency developing off our coast. Hundreds of cruise passengers sick with COVID. 90,000 of the state's teachers get a pay rise, so why is the union fuming? A Mount Druitt grandmother killed in a freak accident on her way to work. Sydney marks the moment war turned to peace and soldiers who've returned and continue to struggle. And why New Zealand think they have the firepower to punt the Kangaroos out of the League World Cup.
This is 9 News with Mark Burrows.
Good evening. Tonight, the hackers who've terrorised hundreds of Medibank customers have been unmasked as a gang of Russians. The Australian Federal Police say they know who they are, but bringing them to justice might be as difficult as trying to stop them from exploiting people's data for money.
Russia is locked in a battle with the Ukraine, and now it's launched a war of a different kind on Australia.
We know where they're coming from, we know who is responsible, and we say that they should be held to account.
The Prime Minister flew overseas, leaving those hunting down the Medibank hackers to fill in the gaps.
We believe those responsible for the breach are in Russia.
A cyber gang with a worldwide network.
Cybercrime is the break and enter of the 21st century, and personal information is being used as currency.
The AFP says they know who they're after, but refuse to name them. Bringing them to justice may be wishful thinking.
We'll be holding talks with Russian law enforcement about these individuals.
Right now, Russia is an international pariah and has a checkered history of cooperating with the West. One example, denying any responsibility in the MH17 disaster.
Today's tough talk from the AFP is unlikely to stop the hackers. This morning they were back at it, dumping customers' information on the dark web to bring more fear and harm.
It landed with an evil boast. We warned you, we always keep our word. 241 Medibank customers who'd received treatment for alcohol abuse identified. Nervously watching on from the sidelines, the rest of the business community.
We're all in the same storm, we're just in all different boats.
The NAB has revealed it's been the target of 50 million cyber attacks in the past month and has spent tens of millions of dollars trying to be safe and secure.
There's never a guarantee that this won't happen again.
So, no promises, but from the police, a pledge to the Australian public.
The AFP and our partners are not going to give up bringing those responsible to justice.
Damien Ryan, 9 News.
We have breaking news now on the pay packets handed to our state's 90,000 public school teachers. State politics reporter Liz Daniels joins us from Macquarie Street. Liz, a critical decision has just been handed down.
It has, Mark, and it will add fuel to the already fiery industrial dispute between unions and the state government. The Teachers Federation had been lobbying for its members to get a pay rise of at least 7%, or at least in line with inflation. But today, the raise offer from the Premier, which is at 3%, was upheld in the Industrial Relations Commission. It has infuriated the Teachers Federation, which will vow to continue campaigning up until the March election. As for private school teachers, their negotiations are also lagging, and they have vowed to walk off the job for an hour on Tuesday morning next week. For Dominic Perrottet, it is a win, and it caps off a good week for the Premier, who saw his plan to scrap stamp duty for first home buyers become a reality. A Premier outselling his signature stamp duty reform.
Enjoy the day, enjoy the weather.
But summer is bringing back an old foe. A new COVID wave sweeping the country. Our Premier insisting he will not tighten rules.
We need to live alongside the virus. It's not going away, and I've been saying that for months. We expected another wave.
But it has prompted Queensland to move from green to amber on its alert system. From today, masks are recommended in health settings, on public transport and where people can't socially distance, but they're not mandatory. Last week saw a 40% increase in the number of cases recorded, but the true rate of infection is almost impossible to know because not everybody's registering their test.
We are seeing several different variants contribute to this increase.
Because of the number of different strains circulating, there's no telling how long the wave will last.
People could have a couple of infections in this wave because there's different variants. Don't be worried, but do something.
The advice: make sure your booster's up to date, and for vulnerable people, make a plan to access critical antivirals just in case you are infected. Liz Daniels, 9 News.
Well, more on COVID. I want to go straight to Ellie Walsh at Circular Quay. Ellie, you have breaking news on a cruise ship riddled with COVID off our coast tonight.
I do, Mark. These details just into the newsroom now as we go to air. 9 News can reveal the Majestic Princess is on its way here to Sydney. It's set to dock at around 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. And look, while at this stage we're still awaiting final numbers, it's our understanding that an estimated 800 COVID cases are on board. And attending health officials and crew members have been advised to wear full PPE. Of course, the Premier says we need to learn to live with COVID, but Mark, 800 COVID positive cases set to disembark tomorrow morning is still certainly an unsettling thought.
OK, Ellie, thank you. Well, violence in Sydney's west. A man stabbed in the back in Wellington early this morning. Police arrived at the Parks Avenue apartment block just before 1, finding the injured 23-year-old. He was taken to Westmead Hospital in a stable condition. A 4-car pile-up shut down part of Parramatta Road at Homebush West overnight. An eastbound lane cordoned off as smashed-up vehicles were moved into a side street. There was plenty of damage, but nobody was injured. Well, the Prime Minister is tonight bound for Cambodia, the first stop on a diplomatic tour across Asia. Anthony Albanese is set to attend 3 summits in 9 days. All eyes and hopes on a potential meeting with the Chinese President Xi Jinping.
Scaling the stairs at Sydney Airport to a diplomatic tightrope abroad, the PM carries the weight of expectation.
This is a time of great global uncertainty.
So-called summit season, drawing world leaders discussing climate, the economy and security.
We want an Indo-Pacific that is peaceful, that is stable and that is secure.
First stop, the ASEAN summit in Cambodia. The PM's 20,000-kilometre round trip will start here and end at the APEC summit in neighbouring Thailand, between the two G20 in Bali, where he'll rub shoulders with his international counterparts, including US President Joe Biden and China's Xi Jinping. The two presidents will meet privately, but the Prime Minister's played down his own sideline meeting.
There isn't a meeting at this stage locked in. We want to cooperate where we can, but we will stand up for Australian values where we must.
The China-Australia relationship has been in the deep freezer for some time, only recently starting to thaw, and the PM will need to navigate trade sanctions and rising tensions to move forward.
Quite clearly, there have been issues with the relationship. We have some $20 billion of economic sanctions against Australia, but that is not in Australia's interest in terms of our jobs and the economy, but it's also not in China's interest.
A lack of interest too in Vladimir Putin.
Russia needs to get the message that it is isolated amongst those who support the international rule of law, and it should withdraw.
But given Putin's declined the invitation, it's a message that won't be delivered, at least not face to face. Reece D'Alessandro, 9 News.
A grandmother from Hebersham in Sydney's west is being remembered for her kind and caring nature after she was killed by a work friend in a freak accident. The woman was about to jump into her colleague's car this morning when it reversed back, running her over.
For mother of 3, Lilia Dezon, today started like any ordinary workday. Lunch packed, her work friend waiting in the driveway, Lilia left her Hazeldine Avenue home at 5 this morning for the last time.
It appears the car had been left in reverse, and as she was getting into the car and the passenger side door was still open, she was driven backward.
She'd just said goodbye to her son John. He heard a thud and ran outside.
Her face was covered in blood. My first reaction was to call the ambulance. It felt like she was going to make it because she was actually grasping her hands. The last time I saw her was when she actually looked in my eye, and I was like, Ma, yeah, you're going to be fine.
The 69-year-old grandmother died at the scene. Driver and close family friend Socorro Estrella was taken to Mount Druitt Hospital for mandatory testing. The two women worked here at the Trident Automotive Parts factory in Silverwater and would carpool to work every day. Their bosses alerted to this tragic incident when they didn't show up for their 6 a.m. shift.
They've been friends for a long time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm pretty sure it's going to also affect her as well, deeply.
Lilia had plans to retire next year, and she was excited to celebrate her 70th birthday with family from the Philippines.
Tell your mum and dad like you love them. Make sure that they know that you love them. Yeah, it's really sad. Hopefully she's in a bad place now.
Police are investigating the incident. James Wilson, 9 News.
Donald Trump has attacked Rupert Murdoch's News Corp in a scathing statement claiming it's all in for his main challenger, Ron DeSantis. It comes after the New York Post portrayed the former president as Trumpty Dumpty and the Florida governor as the future. Trump called DeSantis an average politician whose success was owed by his endorsement, accusing him of playing games by refusing to rule out a White House run in 2024. The Taliban has banned women from gyms, public parks and fun fairs in Afghanistan, claiming they weren't practising segregation or hijab rules. Women can only be outside with a male escort and have also been barred from middle and high schools, despite firm promises from the group that they wouldn't limit education when they came to power 15 months ago. Well, Ukraine is reacting with caution to Russia's announcement it's withdrawing from the southern city of Kherson. If it does pull out troops, it would mark one of Moscow's most significant retreats and a potential turning point in the war. But there are fears that the Russian military could be setting a trap.
Ukrainian forces are closing in on the outskirts of Kherson city. Locals hugging soldiers, the first Ukrainians they've seen for more than 8 months. Kherson was captured by Russia just days after the invasion began. President Zelensky is urging caution with fears the Russian withdrawal might be a trap. If it's not, it marks a major turning point and Moscow's biggest retreat since it abandoned plans to capture Kyiv.
This is a significant military milestone for the Ukrainians if, in fact, it happens that Russia follows through and withdraws.
But a senior Ukrainian official is among those accusing Russia of trying to turn Kherson into a city of death by booby-trapping the city with mines.
Is likely to be laced with improvised explosive devices, and it'll take a significant amount of time for the Ukrainians to clear routes in and out.
Ukraine's defence minister saying any withdrawal would likely take at least a week.
Just imagine 40,000 people with the equipment, weaponry, armed vehicles, tanks, etc., etc.
The US's most senior general is estimating 100,000 Russian troops and 100,000 Ukrainian troops have been killed or wounded since the start of the war, and around 40,000 Ukrainian civilians have been killed. A shocking statistic and the highest estimated death toll we've heard from any Western official. In London, Karianne Greenbank, 9 News.
November the 11th is the day of remembrance when we mark the moment war turned to peace. But increasingly, thought is turning to those who have come home and struggled to find peace of mind.
A symbolic start to a solemn day as a mark of respect lights up the famous Opera House sales. From the War Memorial in Canberra to the local services in almost every suburb. Remembrance Day 2022, the first in years without any COVID restrictions. A day for veterans young and old to be proud and the rest to say thank you.
Been receiving text messages and Facebook pages about the services throughout New South Wales, and there have been big crowds everywhere they go.
At the Cenotaph in Martin Place, the Prime Minister, the Premier and the New South Wales Governor laid wreaths, then stood silent with the nation for 1 minute at the 11th hour of the 11th day on the 11th month, the moment that marks the end of the First World War. In the crowd, 97-year-old World War II and Korean War veteran Ken Frank.
I would have liked to have met fellow service people, but I think I'm at an age where so many of them passed on or are not well, so it's rather sad.
Sharing his thoughts 104 years after what was supposed to be the war to end all wars.
Wars seem to go on, and we don't ever seem to learn, which is a damn shame.
Not long after the guns fell silent in World War I, the tradition of wearing poppies began. They were among the first flowers to bloom on the Western Front after the war. Now they adorn Martin Place and the place above so many hearts in remembrance of those lives lost. A list of lives that keeps growing, not just on the battlefield.
The 3 flowers are for 3, sorry, I get emotional here, 3 servicemen who took their own lives.
Remembrance Day, a poignant reminder that many who've served continue to struggle.
We remember those who didn't come home, but those who have come home with issues that are ongoing, many of which have been identified by the Royal Commission.
With the entire nation giving a wraparound hug to all of those veterans who feel that they need further support.
Those who need support can connect with a range of ex-services organisations or contact Lifeline. Jane Azzopardi, 9 News.
Well, there's no rest for locals and SES volunteers in central western New South Wales who are still filling sandbags. As fears grow, another big wet weather front will hit the state's inland in coming days.
We anticipate some of the rivers will again commence rising after they have been slowly falling.
Climate experts say extreme rain events are becoming more common, statistics showing an increase of 40% over the past 20 years. Well, tonight severe storms are already hitting central New South Wales. Belinda is here and is Sydney in the firing line.
We should be okay tonight, Mark. The latest forecast from the Bureau says there is the chance of a thunderstorm in our outer west, but so far just a few light showers, Penrith recording the most with 0.4 of a millimetre. This is where those severe storms are likely to hit. Damaging winds and large hail possible in that warning area over the next few hours. A mostly fine day for Sydney today. Top temperatures a little warmer than average, moderate northeasterlies, keeping the city cooler, stopping at 24.9. Penrith, the warmest in our west, reaching 27.9. We are in for a wet and stormy weekend, but it's not all bad news. I'll be back with a forecast later on, Mark.
See you then. Thank you. Well, it's a zebra crossing, but not as we know it. New 3D stripes to make drivers think twice. This one at Manly. But do they help or hinder? That story next. A driver smashes through a Hurstville hair salon. A child is in the car. The world's first contraceptive gel for men. And the incredible space discovery found on the ocean floor after 25 years. A close shave at a South Hurstville hairdresser's this afternoon. A car smashing into the front of a Greenacre Road salon just after 1. There were 2 people inside the vehicle, an adult and a child. Fortunately, both walked away without any injuries. Well, the state's first 3-dimensional pedestrian crossings have been rolled out in Manly. The markings are designed to make drivers slow down, but locals are divided as to whether they'll make any difference.
The Beatles made pedestrian crossings groovy, but now they're being taken into a new dimension.
If it does help slow people down as they're heading towards pedestrian crossings, then that's a good thing.
3D crossings are in Europe, Asia and back home in Melbourne and Cairns, but now they've arrived in Sydney. 3 of them installed along Manly's busy South Stane Road.
They stand out more than the old crossings did, so it might make people more aware of it.
It's a 30k zone, and what we're really looking for is ways just to remind the drivers that there are a lot of pedestrians around.
The design works by allowing pedestrians to see just a normal crossing, but behind the wheel, drivers experience the full 3D effect. The mind-bending markings make it appear as though the lines are rising from the pavement like a roadblock. Did they make you drive slower?
Yeah, they probably did a little bit.
So I don't think I noticed a difference, to be honest.
A UK study showed the crossings did initially reduce speed by 31%, but that fell to around 13% a year later.
Seeing it every day, I know it's there.
Council will use cameras to monitor whether drivers do pump the brakes during the 6-month trial.
Where there's confusion, there's always potential for harm.
It's a difficult area, apparently, from an engineering point of view, for those normal crossings. It's something new, and hopefully it'll have a good impact.
Elizabeth Bryan, 9 News.
Well, detectives are launching a fresh investigation into the murder of John Benet Ramsey almost 3 decades after the 6-year-old was killed. The Colorado Cold Case Review, with the support of Boulder Police, will use new technology to test a small amount of DNA evidence linked to the case. Police say until now they have followed up 21,000 tips, travelled to 19 states and interviewed 1,000 people. The Queen Consort has paid tribute to Her late Majesty at Westminster Abbey's Field of Remembrance. A temporary plot has been created for people to leave tributes to Queen Elizabeth alongside soldiers who died for their country. It features 2 photos of the Queen at the Field of Remembrance in the 40s and in 2002. Well, nearly 37 years after the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded after liftoff, a piece has been found off the coast of Florida. The discovery was made by a History Channel documentary crew who had been searching for a downed World War II aircraft in the Atlantic Ocean. NASA says this gives the world an opportunity to pause and remember the 7 daring and brave explorers who lost their lives in the blast. Well, it's one way to get home. Next, a man accused of stealing a taxi to drive home from the city, but he struggles to get into it. The last thing you want to see from the window seat en route to Sydney. The drug trial giving hope to sufferers of Parkinson's disease. And not even your Woolworths rewards are safe. What customers should know about the supermarket points hack.
It was a frenzy on Wall Street overnight as investors dared to dream the interest rate rises could soon come to an end. The main index soared 5.5%, the biggest gain in 2.5 years, and the bruised and battered tech giants led the way. Amazon jumping 12%, Meta 10%, Apple and Microsoft 8%, and Tesla 7%, despite talk of possible bankruptcy. The reason was inflation. Prices in the US didn't rise as much as economists thought they would last month, creating a wave of optimism that maybe the crisis is starting to lose steam. A huge gain on our market today too, with the ASX rising 2.8%, or over 190 points. BHP, CSL and Macquarie all up more than 3%. And the Aussie dollar hit a 7-week high. It's buying 66 US cents, close to 65 euro cents, and 56.5 British pence.
Thanks, Chris. A night out in the city and a man attempts to get into a silver taxi on Hunter Street, but he falls to the footpath instead. What happens next has him in trouble. Police say the 42-year-old from Bronte threatened the taxi driver and then took off with the cab, which was found later dumped and damaged in Wallara. The man handed himself into police and will be in court before Christmas. Police say they entered their pursuit of a motorcycle rider shortly before he collided with a car and was seriously injured in the city's southwest. An independent investigation is now underway following the incident on Bernera Road at Preston's. A strap used to secure a plane's propeller has penetrated the fuselage of a Link Airways flight as it took off from Canberra heading towards Sydney. 3 people inside were struck by debris and were injured. Well, a rare and deadly November hurricane has slammed into the east coast of Florida, swallowing up homes, buildings and roads. In a nasty case of deja vu, the storm hit an area still cleaning up from the destructive Hurricane Ian.
Daytona Beach, homes, swimming pools, waterfront properties, gone. The force of Hurricane Nicole pushing the Atlantic Ocean into front yards, the coastline eaten away. For some, an up-close front row seat to an angry sea, while for others, homes ripped open, lives ripped apart. After Nicole made landfall in Florida, the first hurricane to do so in November in nearly 40 years.
The wind's very strong here, and the waves just keep on coming.
That's my backyard.
Florida's east coast is copping a pounding. Category 4 Hurricane Ian washed away seawalls and the last lines of defence only weeks ago. And last night, Nicole, a much weaker storm, did the rest.
It was a trifecta of Ian and then a king tide and then Nicole, and we just didn't have a chance to recover.
The weather-weary state once again cleaning up.
We're ready and we have resources to respond to whatever post-storm needs may arise.
In the United States, Lizzie Pearl, 9 News.
A little piece of Sydney history rolled back into action today. One of the state's oldest bowling clubs, Balmain, established in 1880, reopened after a 17-month shutdown. The unwelcome holiday was caused initially by the pandemic and then staff shortages. Boosting membership, the Balmain Club has amalgamated with nearby St John's Park Club. Well, it's been a slow start to spring for property, but that could be over, with new listings up 7% in October, meaning more options for home buyers. Overall, though, they're still 31% down compared to this time last year. The suburbs with the biggest drops in new listings, Bexley, Bondi Beach, Gladesville, Redfern and Camperdown, all at least 60% down from 2021. Well, an Australian-developed drug that targets the build-up of iron in the brain is being trialled on patients with a progressive brain disorder. The hope as it will also eventually be used to combat Parkinson's disease.
56-year-old Wendy Lanner used to be so active. She managed a beauty salon, was a regular at her gym and played intensely with her grandchildren.
For my family, I did everything, went to gym, and I could do none of that, and I can barely walk and barely talk.
A few years ago, the grandmother from Rosemeadow near Campbelltown was diagnosed with multiple system atrophy, a disease that is often mistaken for Parkinson's.
That I was getting quite worse, faster than someone with Parkinson's.
There are no treatments to slow or stop the disease.
We can only really manage the symptoms as best we can.
MRI scans of affected patients overseas show an accumulation of iron in the brain. Researchers are trialling an oral drug called ATH434, which binds and redistributes the iron to prevent clumps of a protein called alpha-synuclein, implicated in both MSA and Parkinson's disease.
Prevents an important protein from misfolding, and in doing so, it actually helps preserve the integrity of nerve cells.
That are specifically targeted to try and reverse or reduce the underlying disease process.
The drug will be trialled on 60 patients with early disease in Australia, New Zealand and the UK. The company is also carrying out animal studies to target Parkinson's disease. Sydney's St Vincent's Hospital is currently recruiting patients with multiple system atrophy.
I try and live each day to my best ability. I do think if this drug is successful, it's going to be marvellous.
Gabriella Rogers, 9 News.
Customers of the Woolworths Everyday Rewards scheme are reporting their points have been stolen. Some are seeing hundreds of dollars worth, which they've stockpiled for Christmas, being used by other shoppers. Woolworths has ramped up security and is promising to reinstate any stolen points. Well, ahead, Australia's cheapest super fund. The new low-fee fund, promising you more money in retirement, will break it all down later. No skill required, the thief who wheeled the whole machine right out the door. And Roz is here with sport, and the Kiwis, they think they've got an edge over Australia?
The war of words, it has begun, Mark, as the two sides prepare to face off at the Rugby League World Cup tomorrow. Tonight, Kiwi coach Michael Maguire explains why he thinks his side can dominate the semi-final. It's England versus Pakistan in the T20 final, but either way, Australia will be a winner. And a big Australian Open announcement as our Aussie women star on the world stage.
And a wild weekend for parts of New South Wales. Severe storms, heavy rain and humid conditions. So will Sydney cop it too?
The first shot in the Rugby League World Cup Trans-Tasman rivalry has been fired by Kiwi coach Michael Maguire. He says the New Zealand forward pack has the edge on Australia, a claim which will be put to the ultimate test in tomorrow morning's semi-final.
The big boys pumped up for the biggest game of the tournament. And they'll need it. Jared Warrior-Hargreaves has been ruled out with a hamstring injury. Michael Maguire hitting back at suggestions the Kiwis lack aggression without JWH.
Well, you've got James Fisher-Harris and Moses Leota that have just come out of a grand final, and I think those two are probably two of the best players on the field. So I've got a pretty handy front row. Obviously Joey Tapp's there as well. I think he was best front rower in the game.
How is Jared? I imagine he would be gutted that he's missing this game.
Yeah, he is. I mean, he's like a cage animal, really. But that's the way he plays. But off the field, he's a champion fella, and he understands his role. Obviously, he wants to be on the field.
James Tedesco took a cheeky swipe at his Roosters teammate, who spent most of the tournament serving suspensions.
It's had a good holiday. It's been here for 5 weeks, played half a game, and that's it. So.
Mal Meninga knows the Kiwis have a point to prove after a wake-up call against Fiji.
They've probably got not a rude awakening, but I feel that that sort of knocked their motivations back in place. Around the tournament, it's been, without being disrespectful, it's been a fairly easy ride for most of the top teams in this tournament. So that sort of made them realise they need to knuckle down and get ready for this.
And Meninga confirmed Ben Hunt will start at hooker, with Harry Grant coming off the bench. In Leeds, Emma Lawrence, 9 News.
The Gillaroos survived a scare in their final pool game against New Zealand in the Women's World Cup. The Kiwi Ferns led 8-6 after scoring a try in the 54th minute before Julia Robinson crossed for a 4-pointer off a controversial pass to seal a 10-8 victory. The win sets up a semi-final showdown between Australia and PNG, while New Zealand face England for a spot in the final. Sydney has missed out on hosting the AFL's answer to Magic Round, which instead is heading to South Australia. But don't suggest it's a copy of Rugby League. AFL boss Gil McLachlan separating the as-yet unnamed event from the NRL.
It's not Magic Round. It's like whatever it's going to be. It needs to have its own life and its own identity and its own character. And it actually got to reflect, I feel, the game.
9 games will be played across the state over 4 days, with most held in Adelaide. Dave Rennie has continued his rotation mantra ahead of next year's Rugby World Cup. The Wallabies coach making 11 changes for Sunday's test against Italy.
We've got 5 tests in a row. We've got competition for places, and the guys we're playing have played a lot of test footy for us this year. So, they're not rookies.
With James Slipper and Michael Hooper rested, Alan Alatoa becomes the 85th captain in Wallabies history. England has spoiled the dream T20 World Cup final between Pakistan and India with a massive victory in the semis. It sets up a clash between two Australian cricket legends who've switched allegiance and are now part of the English and Pakistani coaching teams.
Australia's team is long gone, but at least one Aussie will be a World Cup winner on Sunday. Former Baggy Green brothers Michael Hussey and Matthew Hayden will face off at the MCG as batting coaches for England and Pakistan.
The way that Pakistan has welcomed me has been, a real treat and something I'll never forget.
Hayden fully aware of what victory would mean to his adopted nation, which has been rocked by floods and political unrest.
It means the opportunity to set nations alight and alive again, reinvigorate a nation through its national team's performance.
The hope of an epic final between neighbours Pakistan and India was crushed by England in Adelaide.
It would have been lovely to see the two subcontinental rivalries come to this stage and play.
Openers Alex Hales and Joss Butler happy to crash the party.
Oh, what a shot that is from Joss Butler.
Chasing down the target of 169 without losing a wicket.
There's a lot of people that would have loved to have seen another edition of that, but they'll have to wait for another time.
The Indian side blaming the loss on a lack of experience in Australian conditions. Their players are banned from playing T20 tournaments in other countries, while 9 of England's 11 have featured in the Big Bash.
It's a huge challenge for us. Yes, a lot of our boys maybe do miss out on the opportunities of playing in a lot of these leagues.
Luke Dovesey, 9 News.
Tennis Australia has declared this year's Australian Open will be the biggest in the tournament's history. Off the back of Ash Barty's historic win, Nick Kyrgios climbed through the ranks and a new broadcast deal with Nine that runs until the end of 2029.
I think 2023 is shaping up to potentially be our biggest and best yet, and certainly in the ticket sales, in the interest from partners, broadcasters, we're seeing that, and the commitment that Nine has made into the future is another indication of that.
For us, it's a really important backbone to the programming schedule of Nine right through summer.
The summer will open with the United Cup, a brand new mixed teams tournament. Although Aussie fans already have something to cheer about, Australia reaching the semi-finals of the Billie Jean King Cup after recording a 3-0 whitewash over Belgium. The Aussies face Great Britain in the final 4, looking to break our 48-year trophy drought, hitting form at the right time ahead of a big summer of tennis, Mark.
OK, Ross, thank you. Well, Sydney's cheapest petrol is up next, plus the new super fund to enter the market promising low fees and big returns. An IUD for men next, the trial of a temporary contraceptive being hailed a game changer. And curiosity gets the better of a pet puppy stuck down a pipe. It's branded as the cheapest super fund ever to enter the Australian market, an American giant with a long track record of success. Vanguard promises to charge minimal fees to manage our retirement savings on a day where the country's stock market soared 2.5%.
For the first time in a long time, red was the exception on the ASX. Our stock market hitting a 5-month high off the back of a surging Wall Street. Good timing for a new superannuation player claiming to be one of the cheapest on the market.
From day one, we were already at the low cost end. So we think that's a great thing for Australians and a great thing for the industry as we put pressure on others.
Vanguard is a major American firm and it wants to invest our retirement savings while promising not to charge an arm and a leg. Vanguard's annual fee will be 0.58% of your super balance. That's around $290 a year for someone with $50,000 in super. UniSuper charges $315 on the same balance and AMP $353. It's much better compared to funds like Australian Super, BT and Host Plus.
$290 a year. That's very cheap, and that will hopefully set the benchmark for other funds to follow.
Right now, there's around $3 trillion tied up in Australian super funds. Over the past 5 years, industry funds backed by unions have dominated their retail competitors. 7 of the top 10 are industry funds, led by Host Plus, delivering a 7.2% return. But Vanguard is trading off its reputation as the king of low-cost investing in the US.
We think we can actually move the needle and create better outcomes for Australians, and they deserve it and they need it.
Vanguard wants younger Australians as customers, many of whom don't want their super invested in companies that may not align with their social or political views.
If they want to exclude fossil fuels or they want to exclude armaments or tobacco, they can buy particular products that we have in our product suite that exclude those.
Behind the family home, your second biggest asset is usually your super. So Vanguard's promises will be closely watched. Chris O'Keefe, 9 News.
The big banks have wasted no time passing on November's rate rise. It kicks in today. CBA, NAB and ANZ variable mortgage holders have had their loans rise by 0.25 percentage points, Westpac will move on Tuesday. Since May, borrowers have seen their rates rise by 2.75 percentage points, or $760 a month on a $500,000 loan. Well, Australian doctors are conducting a world-first contraceptive trial for men, likened to a mini vasectomy. The 10-minute reversible procedure involves injecting them with a fertility-blocking gel.
Many blokes are excited by the prospect of a new form of men's birth control.
Sign me up, let's do it, 100%.
Yeah, I'll try it, definitely.
Professor Nathan Lawrenchuk is trialling a world-first male contraceptive procedure called ADAM on 25 volunteers.
I suppose it's a mini version of a vasectomy.
For the ADAM treatment, a urologist will inject a gel into the vas deferens, a pair of tubes which carry semen. The gel then forms a barrier, blocking sperm from travelling through the tubes and preventing egg fertilisation.
The gel works by a little bit like super glue. It will take about 10 minutes and will be done under local anaesthetic.
Unlike having the snip, the liquid vasectomy is temporary.
We expect the gel to last in humans for around the 2-year period.
To their surprise, researchers have been inundated with blokes volunteering to be a part of the contraceptive trial. In fact, Epworth has now paused recruitment due to overwhelming interest. If and when the ADAM contraceptive makes it to market, many women who have been using various forms of birth control for decades will also welcome the new option for fellas.
Just so men can finally share the burden.
It's long overdue, years overdue. We should already have it.
Emily Rice, 9 News.
It doesn't take much skill to be a thief. Ask this man. Keen to get his hands on the gold coins inside this claw machine, all it took was a little muscle to push the toys and tiny treasures outside the Adelaide shop. But his success did not last long. 2 hours later, he was grabbed by the long claw of the law. Kicking up a stink with his yelping and yapping proved a saving grace for a cavoodle pup trapped in a sewer pipe near Newcastle. His owner heard the canine's cries for help and called in a fire and rescue team, who thankfully were flushed with success. Let's check petrol prices now. Taking a look, the price of unleaded across Sydney tonight. The average is $1.98, but you can get it cheaper at Carlingford and Greenacre. Well, coming up, Belinda with the weekend weather.
Thank you, Mark. Partly cloudy conditions tonight, still sitting in the low 20s across Sydney. Stormy weather on the way. Your weekend forecast is next. Welcome back. Cloud building over Sydney this afternoon, but clear and calm conditions on the harbour early this morning. The moon lingering in the sky. The Manly ferry heading out from Circular Quay as the Quantum of the Seas sailed in. A smooth trip for passengers, no matter how big their boat. Temperatures close to average for this time of year, with a few light showers in our west. Most suburbs reaching a top of 27 today. Moderate northeasterlies keeping the city cooler, stopping at 25. Across the state, severe storms are likely to hit these areas over the next few hours, and it's just the start of it. A low and trough generating very dangerous thunderstorms across a large area of central and eastern Australia over the weekend. Onshore winds bringing some showers to the coast tomorrow. Brisbane staying warm and dry. A possible storm for Canberra and Adelaide. And back home to New South Wales, mostly cloudy conditions with scattered showers and those thunderstorms. Temperatures heating up across inland parts. Mudgee heading for a top of 28 tomorrow. That is 10 degrees hotter than today. Those onshore winds, though, keeping the south coast cooler, a top of just 23 degrees in Bega, while Grafton hits the low 30s. Sydney could get a bit of everything tomorrow. Firstly, some fog in the west early tomorrow morning. Plenty of sunshine to make us smile, though. There's a high chance of showers in our outer west. Medium chance elsewhere. Less than 3 millimetres forecast, but there's also the chance of a thunderstorm, and it could be severe. Penrith and Richmond heading for a top of 29 degrees tomorrow, 27 or 28 for the rest of our west. Just a little cooler in the city thanks to some southeasterlies reaching 26, and overnight temperatures ranging from 13 to 17. Conditions remaining unstable on Sunday. Showers with a possible storm and a top of 27 in the city, hitting 30 degrees on Monday with another couple of millimetres. Fine on Tuesday before a cool change in the middle of the week. A mostly fine week ahead for our west, a top of just 23 degrees on Wednesday. Lots of sunshine on Tuesday and Monday after a light shower or two. Sunday, the wettest, 4 to 10 millimetres forecast. And watch out for any warnings with some storms about as well, Mark.
Thanks for the advice, Belinda. Thank you. Well, Deb Knight is next with a current affair. That is 9 News for this Friday. I'm Mark Burrows. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night.